All right, you guys, welcome back. I have a good friend here today, Mike Salemi, and we'll be talking about an important subject. So, a lot of people that want to kind of transform their health and wellness, I feel like they usually skip like a lot of steps in the process and kind of jump straight into just a rigorous, tough workout routine or like a strict diet. And there's like a tremendous amount of things that need to be done at the foundational or like the base conditioning level to even be able to do like an intense workout without being injured or just having benefits from it. So I figured I would invite you on the show. You're like a very accomplished athlete yourself. And from listening to a few of your interviews, I've kind of learned that at one point you're also just a very fit looking, unhealthy person like myself, and had to learn the hard way as well. So I'm hoping to kind of like share your story and kind of what you did, to lay like a solid foundation that you can build a performance routine on top of instead of rushing directly into like uh, a tough workout routine that a lot of people aren't even healthy enough to do, for example, which I see a lot of people falling into those patterns. So, welcome to the show. Mike has a long resume. I'm not going to list it all here, but it will be in the description, and he's very credible. Just know that. So,
Very cool, man. Thank you. Well, I love what you shared about skipping steps. And, when I think about just my journey, like I would say so much of what I'm about fitness wise and movement wise is teaching intentional fitness and intentional training. And that just didn't happen overnight, right? So it's like so much when I look back at my journey, like, yes, like some of the achievements and the accomplishments, stick out for sure, winning world championships and powerlifting and kettlebell sport. But with that came a tremendous amount of injuries. And like when I think about all of like the biggest learning lessons in my life, it didn't usually happen from winning a title. It usually happened from being injured, having to be very, very honest with myself and just realize, man, is this actually working for me? And not just working for me in the way like, am I squatting 600 pounds? Am I deadlifting 600 pounds? But it's like, how do I feel about myself all along the way? And so early on, like my whole life was the gym. And I think there was tremendous, tremendous teachings in that. Like I learned a lot about myself, built confidence, learned what it was like to set goals, to achieve goals, to miss goals. But in that process, I forgot about that very word, that it is a process. I was so focused on the outcome goal. I had no understanding of what even a process goal was until I was probably like, I think 23 was when I started working with Paul Chek. And when I was working with him, it was like I went to him injured, and he really opened up my whole world of understanding that, man, there is so much more than just sets and reps and loads and tempos. We have to consider truly the whole individual, because here's the thing, like, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, it's not hard to kick someone's ass in the gym. Like if you just want to get a sweat and just want to beat yourself down, literally I could give you an AMRAP of as many burpees as you can do, and you'll get a sweat going, you'll feel a pump in your arms, you'll feel a pump in your legs, your lungs will be going. But truly, if we want to formulate a healthy relationship to training, we've got to look at all the other factors, from nutrition to sleep to mental emotional state. And it was really when I started learning about those things due to being injured, the things that I was doing were working in some perspectives, but they were not nourishing me at a soul level and at a heart level. And so again, there's many, many, many different ways to reach a goal. And I think if the goal is just the number, then sure, many different coaches, many different ways will get you there. But I would say the whole goal is to not just hit a number, but hopefully to be a better person as a result of it. So to be a better father, to be a better husband, to be a better boyfriend, whatever it is. And in order to do that, it takes a tremendous amount of self-awareness. And that's really what I would say so much of my history is about, and really what makes me so goddamn passionate about this right now is supporting real people. Like what people show on Instagram and stuff like that, it's all the highlights, And I get that, and that's cool. And sometimes that's what I share as well. But I think we're dealing with people, and the human body and people in general are very complex. So we have to consider these other things if we do truly want to develop a healthy training lifestyle with balance, with longevity as a primary focus. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, can you dive into like at least a little bit of background in terms of what injuries you had throughout your history, and then what each individual injury kind of taught you along the way, and what you feel even led to that injury? I know you kind of hinted at it in your introduction, but kind of going in a little bit more depth.
Yeah, so as a kid, my first athletic background was in gymnastics. And so gymnastics laid, I would say, just a tremendous foundation for movement and body awareness and self-confidence and working through fears, all sorts of stuff. But what I noticed was is I think when I was around 12 or 13, I had experienced a lower back injury. So I had a pinched nerve in my lower back. I remember actually
Oh
being
man, you started early.
I started. I mean, like my brother started before me. He started like when he was like 5 or so. I think I started when I was 7. And this home has been in my family for a number of years. And then my brother and I bought this home from my folks. And I only say that because basically the office that I'm in right now, recording this with you, is the same room that I grew up in for the most part since fourth grade. And so I remember being in this very room. My bed was literally right behind where I'm sitting now. And I remember just waking up one day and just being in excruciating pain. Like I couldn't go to sleep, and my parents' bedroom was right behind me, and I couldn't even speak. I was in such pain. So I remember like lifting my arm and like knocking on the room for like what felt like hours. And then I think it was my mom who came in. She's like, "Mikey, what's going on?" Like, I don't know, mom. I was like 12 years old. I was like, I don't know, but I am in so much pain in my lower back. Like, I don't know what's going on. And so we went to get it checked out. I had a pinched nerve. And so as I was rehabbing that injury, it was interesting because, like, so much to that point, and in every sport, my identity was so tied to that sport. Like, who Mike was an athlete. Who Mike was a gymnast. And so when I had to be forced to take a break from that, it was really shitty. Like it was not fun. I had just all these questions. Am I going to be able to get back? You know, my friends know me as this athletic guy. Now I'm injured, my low back. And anybody who's had a low back injury knows if your back is injured, it affects, or you're in pain at any level, which so many of the population has lower back injuries, everything that you want to do will be influenced and impacted by that. So just getting in and out of my mom's car to go to gymnastics practice, or going to school, putting on a backpack, reaching over, whatever it was, bending over to pet my little Rottweiler, grab her ears and just like scratch, all that sort of stuff was directly impacted. Also my mental emotional state. So it's really hard to be happy if you're always in pain, because
Yeah.
that facilitation's always there. And so thankfully, the guy who rehabbed me was a chiropractor, but he was also a drug-free bench press champion of the world. He was like, his name was Mike Ludovico. He weighed 220 pounds drug-free and was benching over 600 pounds.
Hmm.
And so he took me into the gym, and basically that was my new family, my new community. And through that, I found really my first, I loved strength and conditioning and gymnastics. That was one of my favorite parts. But really, I found something I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. Like, I get this. I felt like I finally found something that I was really good at and that I could bite my teeth into. And, to your question in terms of what kind of happened along the way, that was one of the first injuries. But when I was in powerlifting, I reached a good level. I was basically an elite level lifter, and again, won some good records. But basically, what had happened was, and this has kind of been my pattern over the years. It's where I'll get hooked up with a great coach, and I had some great coaches at the time, trained even at Westside Barbell. But what happened is I was trying to be the best student ever. So I was trying to follow everything they said to a T. I was performing everything, the sets, the reps, the training cycle. And what I found is my body was beat up. But because I wanted to be a good student and good athlete, I basically did it no matter what. I disregarded what was the actual experience what that was going on within me. And so what I found is I ended up, no matter what coach it was, I would dive into it. I would do everything they said, to the extent that I would actually lose myself. I would actually lose the actual innate wisdom that my body was telling me, man, like, training this much or this often or in these positions, for whatever reason, they don't feel good. And so in powerlifting, I had an injury to my shoulder. I wasn't actually sure what happened, but it was super painful. That led me to Olympic weightlifting. And then when I got into Olympic weightlifting, I found kettlebell sport, and then I was in that for 10 years. Now, in kettlebell sport, I had what's called a compartment syndrome in my left arm. So my
Hmm.
left arm would pool with blood, it would swell on any hard effort. And in that experience, I was trying to reach the highest level, or one of the highest levels, which is called master of sport. And man, I was going for it all that for like 3 or 4 years straight. I would get so close within one, two, three, 4 or 5 reps, and then I'd be forced to put the weight down. And that taught me so much about perseverance and commitment and discipline. And I knew deep down that I had so much more in me. Like I was like, man, if I could just figure this one effing thing out, I know I could hit this level. And so I would say for me in it, I was just very disciplined and committed to a longer term process. And thankfully, that's what led me to Paul. And
Hmm.
so when I went to Paul, he was the one person that was able to figure out what was going on, rehab me. And thankfully, I did, because not only was I able to reach my goal of master of sport, win a world championship, but one of the things that I was blown away at was at the end of this one, I think it was 2017, I was competing in the long cycle, so double clean and jerk, 232 kilo bells. And I was shocked at the end of the competition. I mean, definitely I was exhausted, I was tired, I pushed it. But literally, if I wanted to, within 3 days, I could have come back and trained again. And if I wanted to, within a week, I could have competed again. And that was never my experience in the past. Usually it took weeks or months to come back from it. So with Paul, like I learned a whole different way of caring for my body. I was actually training probably much, actually, not probably, I was training much less than I used to. And my numbers kept going up. And I just felt so much more athletically. So I would say like the mental fortitude I learned in that, but then also like, man, we got to consider, like I was talking before, if our goal is longevity and doing what we love for a long time, we have to consider some of the other components of health, fitness, and performance for sure.
Yeah, that's one thing I found kind of limiting on my part too. I had a lower back injury as well back in 2015. It wasn't like totally terrible. Luckily, I just instinctually just took a month off, and didn't do anything. And for the most part, it healed like 90%. But when I was seeking help, I went first to the medical doctor, then they're like, just don't lift weights anymore and just take these painkillers for the next month. But obviously, like with you, like going to the gym was one of those unconditional loves for me. It's one of those things I never had to motivate myself to do. I just had to motivate myself, if anything, not to do it, to learn how to step back a little bit. So it wasn't an option for me to kind of give it up. And then on top of that, it's kind of tied to my work as well, because I'm a health and wellness coach like yourself also. So I wasn't going to just not lift weights and take painkillers for a month. And then I went the chiropractor route, and they just give you like a quick adjustment, and no one really kind of looked at my lifting technique or kind of like my training schedule to see if the volume was too much or if it matched my lifestyle demands. And that's kind of like one thing I really liked about the Czech Institute is it doesn't seem like, what's the word for it? It doesn't seem like incomplete.
Yeah.
I'm pretty like, I'm not obviously no one institute or one system has like an answer for everything, of course. But I find like um, a lot of times when you seek, kind of therapies to traditional routes, I just find they're like too limiting in general. I mean, the assessment process is fairly poor, if non-existent altogether. Even with people with like PhDs and they have so many degrees at at the end of their name, their name's like, it's like a thermostat, it's like endless. But then like the assessment's like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Like with the physical therapist, like, yeah, they gave me some corrective exercises, but no one really even looked at like my lifting technique, which is critical, or like serious muscle imbalances I would have, like do even the in-depth assessment that, for instance, you took IMS-1. I took that course as well. Like that was never done, like, do you feel like what's your opinion about that, because that obviously a lot of people aren't going to be as health conscious as you and know where to look, you know what I mean? Because first of all, to know where to look, you have to know a lot about the subject already, unfortunately. And if you don't, then like anyone looks like an expert, you know what I mean? And you'll basically follow anyone's advice because they know slightly more than you, which is probably like a lot more if you don't know anything. So what's your opinion about that in terms of like when an average person that does want to find their health and wellness, how to avoid that kind of struggle or that kind of maze?
Yeah, I mean, I had very, very, very similar experiences. Like before I went to go see Paul, I don't recall exactly, but I was seeing between 8 to 10 different practitioners in about a 2.5 year time frame of like super dedicated focus and commitment to figuring out what was going on. And every single time that I went to a new practitioner, like I tried to seek out, obviously someone who was vetted, who either I talked to some of their past clients, had a bunch of success stories. I was really curious about the modality from Rolfing to chiropractic, traditional to upper cervical to neurosomatic to cranial sacral work to corrective exercise specialist. And each single person looked at me like it was as if, or at least how I experienced it, it was basically as if like they had goggles on or glasses on. And the only thing they could see me through was through the lens of their modality, of their
Mhm.
technique. And so like I learned a bunch from things like Rolfing and upper cervical, and they all made me a little bit better. But because they were only looking at one finite aspect, just the fascia, just the upper cervical, the neck region, just whatever it was. And again, I got results, but it was what I realized is, I mean, shit, the human body is so goddamn complex. And so what I ended up doing and realizing was anybody that I would go see, first and foremost, that made me the promise or made me a promise that their technique, their treatment, their modality would solve my problems, already having been to 8 different ones, I started really, my bullshit meter started getting really good. And that was one of the things that I loved about Paul was obviously he spoke very confidently about his work, but he was the first person that didn't promise me anything. Like literally he told me he's like, "Man, I think I have an idea based off of what's going on, based off of the compartment syndrome in my forearm is actually common in motocross racers. Compartment syndromes tend to be in the legs, but he had that experience. That was the first time I heard that. I was like, huh. And then he's like, I'm not positive. I've got a pretty good idea, but I have to get you at my place, spend some time with you. Just like you said, look at your lifting technique first and foremost, look at the other lifestyle stuff, put you through some tests, some assessments, and only then can I actually make an informed and educated decision. So the first thing that I would say is when you like, it's so important to me to interview different people when you're on your healing journey, when on your strength coach journey, whatever it is, your fitness journey. Because if you're going to spend time, energy, finances, lots of finances, especially at times hiring a coach, one, you want to make sure that they are who they say they are. They can deliver results and hopefully have delivered results with similar cases of what you're going to see them with. And then I would also just, intuitively check in and just be like, how does this feel? Like, how do I relate to this person? How do I connect with this person? Do they really listen to me? Do they really understand me? And are they over promising? I think it can't be understated the effect of like, what's the saying? Under promise, over deliver. And Paul's humbleness in that moment is what sealed the deal for me. Like I already knew Paul. I was like, man, if anybody can probably figure this out, it's going to be someone who looks at so many different aspects like Paul does. But just that humbleness, I was like, you know what? I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm willing to give it a try because I trust the person in front of me. And so the first thing that I would say is if you're going to hire a coach, interview them, interview a few different ones. And also, too, one thing that I did that I thought was really helpful for me is with each person, I would stick with that person for a minimum of 3 sessions, oftentimes 2 to 3 months, because sometimes these things do take a long time to see results, right? Depending if we've had these imbalances, if we've had these compensation strategies, if we've had this improper technique, we've laid a pattern. We've laid, think of it like an old school record, these facilitation patterns of that we're so used to doing. So it takes a long time sometimes to undo that. And while I will say some techniques, some modalities can be magic for what you're trying to do, in my experience, magic is really it's not very common, and it's also an unfair expectation to put on the practitioner. There's a lot of buildup. So interviewing different people, seeing how you feel, seeing how you connect with, also interviewing some of their clients. But then most importantly, as you're going through the process, give it enough time to actually see the results that they're saying they can get for you and commit to it for a longer time. So you can actually have an understanding of that method, of that treatment, what it's doing for you. And then, sometimes, you can get kind of lucky and work with someone who can really help you out. But a lot of it for me was, almost like, I don't know, like a checklist or something like that. A big part of the process was me actually Xing out what didn't work. And I knew, even though that was frustrating and all that stuff, I knew if I was closer to understanding what didn't work, then I would also be on a closer path to what is going to work for me. Like I knew that certain things weren't the end all be all. So I would encourage anybody, link up with someone that you trust and that you're willing to go a little bit of a distance with. With Paul, I worked with him every single month. I would fly down and we would spend 1 to 2 days together, and that lasted 2.5 years. And so again, it goes back for me as the client back to that first major interaction when he didn't overpromise, when he was humble. And I knew, being a student of Paul's, like I knew he was legit. Like I knew he knew what he was doing. And I was willing to go through the process with him, to where I always think, and I always say, like, I don't think I would have been willing to make as many changes as he was requesting and inviting me to do if it was anybody other than Paul, because of that humbleness, because of that experience, because of not over promising. And so I was willing to do that. And we had to for the first 9 months, I didn't compete at all. So, and we had to rebuild everything, rebuild my postural system, my stabilizers, which there was a huge imbalance, work on my posture, my diet. And so just because of that trust that that I over time grew and gained with him, I was willing, and I could see progress being made along the way. And he had the ability to explain it to me both conceptually, like to connect with my head and also connect with my heart. So I knew why I was doing what I was doing, as opposed to just going to someone and being like, hey, you need to do these exercises. It's like, well, why? Why do I need those exercises? And if they're unwilling or don't know, that might be an idea. And they say, oh, you just got to trust me. Well, trusting on blind faith is not a really good thing to do. So as I was basically building up those reps and that relationship with him, I started seeing those results. And for me, that was all the difference.
Yeah, I think like educating the client, I've noticed in Eastern Europe, it's very common for health practitioners to
Yeah.
educate their clients on their pathology. They're like, well, these are the books. This is what's going on with you. You could read these supplementary materials to at least have like a general background understanding um, of what's going on. Because at the end of the day, no one's going to know your body like exactly, or the pain triggers that are happening every single day throughout the day, as well as you. And once you're educated on that pathology, I always say it just makes it easier for you to identify, where that biological tipping point is, or how the tissue is healing, or when it's increasing, when you can increase your capacity, et cetera, et cetera. But I do find that's missing in Western health practice. I don't know why, because it's not that tough. It really doesn't take that much more time or energy. Um, I don't know. What's your take on that? Because I know
Yeah.
you said your background's kind of from Italy, correct?
Yeah, my mom and dad are from Sicily, and
Okay.
I think what you said, dude, is so spot on, because and I really saw this firsthand when I was teaching classes at a chiropractic clinic on Eldoas, which, for those who may not be
Hmm.
familiar, you could think of it like a postural strengthening slash stretching technique. It's very precise, very detailed. And I think in the Western world, at least in my experience, there's a big misconception that our clients don't want to know what's going on. And when I was teaching that class and I was explaining as I was going, so many of the people after class and in like emails thanking me, they're like, dude, I finally get it. And when I get it, I'm way more willing to do the work. And so I think there's a misconception that people don't want to know what's going on in their body. Now, that being said, it does take some skill from the practitioner to speak at their level, for sure. So if someone's talking to you about origin and insertion and that sort of stuff, and you're completely lost, yeah, obviously that's not really going to be
Yeah.
productive. But if you can break it down for someone, and the practitioner is breaking it down for you in a way that you can understand and relate to, I've just seen that people actually thank you, because it's so rare. and people do want to know about their body. It's just we have so much more knowledge over how our computer works, how our car works, these things that are mechanical outside of us. We've completely lost it to a large extent what's actually going on underneath the skin.
Nothing
And
good.
so, what's that?
Nothing good.
Nothing good. Nothing good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's just I think it's enmeshed in our culture, and I think it's enmeshed in the way that education is tend to be taught with personal trainings. And one of the biggest things that's missing in so many practitioners and trainers out there, at least what I've seen, is should be tremendous value placed on the interpersonal skills between you and the client.
Yeah.
Because what do they say? Like, people come for mastery, or people come to get a problem solved, but they stay for community. They stay for the relationship. And the more that I've worked on actually listening to what my client said, closing my mouth more and opening it to ask questions, like I learned so much more, but it developed a relationship of trust. And I think with any healing, whatever it is, trust and safety is number one. So for me, yes, I'm trying to do my best to solve their problem, support them in that. But really, I'm trying to understand who's in front of me and how can I relate to them? How can I connect what we're doing to their dream, their goals, and what's important to them and what's holding them back? Then I really started seeing my coaching. So I would coaching go to a whole new level. So really, it's like, yes, having the technical knowledge is important, but in my opinion, the other 50% is the relationship side of that stuff. That's the meat and potatoes, is connecting with a human being on the other end.
Yeah. I always say, like a successful management, it's like 5% instruction and 95% carry through.
I love it.
Yeah. And the managers that are able to, or whatever, the leaders that are able to make it happen are just really good at actually making the information work in the real world with like real people that have different challenges, different learning capabilities, different things going on in the background with their life, et cetera, et cetera. Because with fitness stuff, a lot of it, it's like, dude, it's all out there. If you want to even have like a master's in nutrition, you could actually just self-educate online for free. All the information is out there. All the information is out there in biomechanics. Then you got to think, like why are 88% of Americans now metabolically unhealthy? And the study I'm referencing, I actually meant to bring it here to reference it and quote it, but anyone can find this on pubmed.gov. And the 12% that are metabolically healthy, the standards that the study used are just so bare minimum. They kind of fell in the range of basically just not dying, and they considered those people as like metabolically healthy. So you have to wonder, like, oh, there's like so much like science, so much breakthroughs that are going on, so much more knowledge about the human, musculoskeletal system, digestive system, mental health, et cetera, et cetera. But then how come people are just getting like sicker and sicker? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, the one thing that came up, and I was reading an article. This was a while ago. This was like 2 or 3 years ago, something like that. And it was published by one of the major consulting firms. And one of the things that they said, it was for business consulting, and they said they rated and ranked the top qualities or traits and characteristics of the best leaders in the world, and like what makes them the best leader. Can you get like what comes up for you? What might be one, two, or three qualities that come up for you for leadership?
The first one you mentioned was a big one, being able to communicate at your followers' level so they can kind of carry out the instruction and understand what's going on. I think that's like very, very important. Being able to create predictable systems that create predictable outcomes as well, not being kind of scatter-minded in your approach, having well-defined yearly goals, then quarterly goals, monthly goals, weekly goals, even daily goals that are able to be objectively tracked and measured some way, instead of kind of just like winging it and saying, I guess we're doing better, stuff of that sort. And then there's so many good traits. You're limiting me to 3 here. But I'll say the third one, although sometimes it's tough. You gotta not be selfish. You got to bring people up with you as well. I think that's very important. You have to, one of the biggest, most common mistakes, like a lot of my corporate employees complain about, is just not feeling appreciated at work. or feeling like they're disposable. Like if it's such a conditional kind of work environment where it's like, oh, you don't perform 1 week, I don't care what you did for 20 years. It's like, what are you doing for the company now? Okay, you had one bad week or bad month because you're going through a divorce. Well, you didn't finish your projects, get the hell out of here. That's kind of avoiding those kind of environments, because like who wants to live like that, or who wants to enforce that?
Sure,
So,
sure. Yeah, I totally hear you. And like when I was coming up with this list before I found out what they had found in this one article or study, yeah, I think those are super important. And what I honestly didn't think about this, but it makes total sense now. The number one quality that they said of what it takes to be a great leader, and this is really like when we're training clients or whatever, we're leading our clients, right? They're coming to us because we know more about a subject matter to guide them to wherever they want to go. And it was awareness, specifically self-awareness. And some of the greatest leaders in the world have a high level of self-awareness, so that with that self-awareness, one, they realize where they're at, what they know, what they don't know, and then also who's in front of them, right? So like you were saying, communication. What I've really felt like, the more oblivious we are to our own world inside and the more oblivious to outside, it makes it so much harder to connect with our people. It's like, how effective can you write a program if you don't know who's in front of you? You don't have that awareness that, man, this person is. I'm thinking back to a time I was teaching workshops early on. I still teach workshops, but this particular workshop, I was teaching kettlebells, and it was at a boxing gym. And I remember I was starting to just learn about Paul stuff. I'd gotten how to eat, move, and be healthy. I think I was around 18 or so. And I was teaching, and the people that were coming to it, I could like see so clearly that they were exhausted, like bags under their eyes, dark circles under their eyes. They didn't move very well. Like they were just genuinely tired, slamming coffee, slamming energy drinks like Red Bulls. And as I was teaching, like I knew the material really well. And so I could instruct it, and I know they got some value out of it. But there was this huge like hole inside me. I was like, man, so many of these people, I just want to say, go home, like get some sleep.
yeah,
Like,
don't go back to work.
don't
Find a
go
more,
back. Yeah,
find a work that's more health conscious and balanced.
totally, totally. And if I was way too self-absorbed and didn't have the awareness, and granted, I still taught, like I taught in such a structured way that again, they got value, but now so much more of my teaching to the best of my ability. Like I know that with at least what I teach, I've got pretty good technical knowledge and skills, etc. But now when I'm teaching, as much as possible, I'm always trying to check in with myself and really see, based off of what they're saying, what they're expressing, showing, how is what I'm saying actually landing for that person? You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
like that was a huge, huge aha for me. And so now I try and tune in so much more to the person in front of me. And with that awareness, my subtle skills as a coach has continually improving. It's something I'm always still working on, but at the same time, that was the big shift in me. And so I love that, like when it comes to leaders and as trainers, coaches, therapists, chiros, whatever, we are leaders for our people. And so that's the other thing when it comes to choosing the right coach for you. If they're just writing you a prescription and sending you on your way, or like when I was working with chiropractors, okay, Mike, you need to come see me 3 days a week for the next rest of your life. And
Yeah,
I'm
I got
gonna,
a car to pay for, man.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it was again, there's different chiropractors for
Yeah,
sure, and better ones and worse ones, but the traditional model was based off of a codependent relationship.
yeah.
It was based off of a relationship that, at least how I experienced it early on, didn't empower me to be my own best healer, didn't invite in me like self inquiry and questioning and adjustments. And okay, is it okay to take an off day today? Is it okay? How do I know how and when to pay attention? So I think the self awareness on the behalf of the trainer, as well as that invitation for the actual client to self regulate, that that is what is really empowering. And so now when I work with someone, I really look at and do my best to hold myself accountable in terms of how am I approaching this? Am I creating a codependent relationship, or am I giving them the tools, the inspiration, that sort of stuff to really find out what's important to them and a process that's sustainable, first and foremost?
Yeah, I also find like I gave a lot of corporate lectures in the past, and I had many clients in the corporate environment too. And they always, I don't know if you found this as well to be the case, but they always actually, not always, but a lot of the times come to you actually thinking they're very healthy when they're not. I don't know. It's like, it's very, very common. I have them, like, for example, I've compiled like at least 250 different HAQs that I've handed out over the years to various corporate employees, for example, just to keep it more contextualized here. And I mean, the average for the listeners, the HAQ is just a basic, very basic kind of questionnaire to gauge out the person's like gut health, emotional health, there's the skeletal health, adrenal health, or hormonal health in general, et cetera, et cetera. And most always, like every single one of those persons says, like, oh, I'm healthy, I feel completely fine. Even my blood work, even the doctor says my blood work is fine. Sometimes they say, oh, I have like a little bit of high blood pressure or whatever. And so, yeah, I mean, first and foremost, the average body fat percentage of the person would be around 27%, like 25 being obese, 20% and over being overweight for a male, for example. And their HAQs would be like at least half the scores would be in the high red. So what's your opinion about kind of, sickness, disease, and obesity being like normalized today? Given that study I also quoted in the beginning, where it's like 88% of people are metabolically unhealthy in the US. But if you interview the bulk majority of those people, they'll probably tell you they're healthy.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think what I found is to build on that is I'll tend to see scores that are either very high in the reds, either in all or in certain criteria, or they'll basically be completely in the green, meaning like scores of zero, like nothing's going on. And I'm looking at the person in front of me and I'm like scratching my head like, man, why are you coming to see me if like if you're so, healthy, like obviously you're coming for a reason. And I think it's truly, one is a lack of awareness, and two is really a lack of education. And I remember being in one of Paul's courses, I think this was HLC2 back in like 2014. And I remember raising my hand and asking him, and I was like, Paul, it was something to the effect of like, Paul, like I see, in that time I was like in powerlifting, I was in the strength world a lot. And I was like, dude, I see all of these, bodybuilders and fitness competitors, and they look amazing. And I'm like, how, how does that happen when they're, a lot of them, let's say, are doing steroids and eating like thousands upon thousands and thousands of calories a day and tons of meat and excessive consumption and shakes and stuff. And I'm like, based off of what we're learning, like they can't be healthy, but how do they look like that? And it was such an aha moment for me because he's like, oh, like at that time I was much younger, and he was just like, you really just you haven't quite fine-tuned your eye yet on what to look for. What you see based off of your experience and your knowledge and education, you see someone who's got big muscles and they're healthy. When I see them, I see someone who's super inflamed, has detoxification issues with all the acne, has got like their gut swelling in certain areas. They're putting body fat more in other areas than others. If you talk to them, they're completely exhausted. They're super stressed. They don't like their work. They don't have really a dream or a passion that gets them up in the morning. And they're looking at their goals in a very short-sighted way. And I was like, huh. So I think in a large part, I think that's really one of the things that we do is like we inform, we educate, and we empower. And so I think it's truly just the way our culture is. It's like, again, we see the highlights on Instagram, we see the bodybuilders on stage, we see the people with Instagram people with these beautiful cars, not knowing that they rented those cars for a half a day so they could do a photo shoot on it. Not knowing, like when I was in powerlifting as an example, and I was on every fat burner, I was on Lipo 6 and Hydroxy Cut and taking Metrex shakes and NO Explode and all of these things that that at the time I thought were enhancing my performance and enhancing my health. Little to realize that what is actually a good bowel movement. Like most of us who like when I ask clients or even my folks or whatever, it's like, Are you having regular bowel movements? Oh, what do you mean? And this was me too. I was like, yeah, my bowel movements are fine. And I look at bowel movements like a report card, right? So if someone's having, alternating between constipation and diarrhea, not having a poop that basically is the right color and then comes to the bottom and floats to the top, if you're seeing undigested food particles, there's so much that we can tell just by looking at our stools, right? So when I started learning that, I was like, oh my gosh. And then my close friend at the time was a Czech practitioner. And she was like, dude, what you're experiencing is not normal. You may want to go get that checked out. So then once I had the awareness there, then I was like, okay, let me look deeper. And once I started getting more educated and I got testing and I had fungal infections and parasite infections and bacteria infection, and I was having stomach ulcers and I had constipation, and I was like, oh, wow. And then that led me on a 2+ year journey to healing my gut and, like really improving the adrenal fatigue that I had. And so I wouldn't have known that had I not been first educated in terms of what's a good bowel movement, or even look at my bowel movement as a whole. Like I know a lot in the corporate environment or business environment, especially with females, like they tend to hold their bowels. Like they'll hold it all day because they don't want to go to the restroom at work, or their boss is beating them down to get a deadline done. And as soon as you hold it for any period of time, you start developing that facilitation pattern and you start numbing down those signals. And if it happened once and it happens twice, then again, you're going to be so disconnected from those sensations, so disconnected from those symptoms and what you're experiencing, you're going to think it's normal. So I would totally agree with you. Like what is normal today is not actually normal. And in fact, the people that are not normal, like the healthier people that are not normal, myself, you, other people in the Czech Institute, that actually should be what's normal. We've just had this whole distorted view based off of media and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I like with the whole entire COVID thing. They're like, oh, let's put this behind us so we can go back to our normal lives. I'm like, what? That was producing obesity, misery, disease, like for 88% of the population. You consider that like normal? They're like, yeah. I'm like, okay. What do you want me to say, man? Can't save everyone.
Yeah.
Well, what do you, I have two questions for you. You've been so they're kind of divergent questions, but one is in regards to like the fitness and performance industry in general. Do you feel it's helping more people like in America become healthy, or holding it back? Because I feel like especially in the fitness industry, I mean, it's really just drug abuse that's like holding up the industry. And it's promoted as, obviously like better eating habits and supplements. Like you can take these supplements and they always picture it next to them, but those aren't the real supplements they're taking. Like, what do you feel about that?
From the training side, or from, like, let's say, the client side?
Either or.
Either or. Yeah. So, man, the fitness industry, it's an interesting one, right? Like it's such a big industry, and just like with any industry, there's going to be good practitioners, there's going to be poor practitioners. By and large, the vast majority of trainers are not super qualified, and or just haven't really been educated in the things that we're saying. So oftentimes they're doing the best they can, but it goes back to the system. And so, like, when we look at the statistics on personal training, something to the effect of like 75 plus or minus percent of personal trainers are out of business within the first year. Okay. And then the average personal training salary is below $40,000, right? So it's a lot of times the people that clients are getting to work with just really haven't put in the reps, the time to develop the awareness and really know. Like, I mean, I didn't find Paul's stuff right away. Like it took me time. Went through NASM, the National Academy of Sports Medicine, which is one of the better personal training organizations, but that's all I knew. And it took me a lot of time and a lot of study and being in the industry for long enough to really open my eyes and and then the injuries that I was experiencing to say, like, man, maybe there's so much more. So I do think by and large, the mass fitness industry has a lot of work to do still. And also too, like, I do put a lot of responsibility personally on trainers, because I feel like we are we specialize in change. We specialize in transformation. We play such a freaking important role in our clients' health, whether it's the corporate role or competitive athletes or the mom who wants to get, her stomach gone, let's just say after having kids. Like, we play such an important role. And having been in, I've been a Division I strength and conditioning coach. I've been a personal trainer. I've worked at large, not quite commercial gyms, but large personal training studios. I've taught workshops, certifications. And so in all that stuff, I've been able to teach and witness other trainers coaching. And so many trainers, like, it's a big pet peeve of mine, will have their clipboard, maybe their timer, and they're just looking down at their clipboard, and the person in front of them, they're not even looking at them. It's
I'm
like,
surprised they even have a clipboard. Usually they're just on their phone.
yeah, they're just on their phone.
That's a huge upgrade, or whatever. If they have a
Dude, I'm
clipboard, at
like,
least, you know.
what are you doing? And so, part of my dream and my passion is to change the way that personal training is viewed in the world, because we have we're working with people on their physical body, on their mental body, and their emotional body, their spiritual body. They're gaining confidence, they're gaining empowerment, they're gaining routines and rituals that are going to help them in the gym and outside. There's so much that we are responsible for, and I think any trainer that comes in the industry that holds it any less of a level than, let's just say, a medical doctor, someone that it misses a lot. And so I think the standard of training as a whole, certain countries are certainly better than others, but as a whole, the standards and the systems are pretty weak.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't know, but just a lot of these certifications you can get through like a week-long course, although they sound like very, very fancy. You can just look them up online, see what you have to do to get it. And it's most always just pay like a few $100, take like a weekend course that's like online, and then take an exam online, that you could easily just probably have someone else take for you. And then you're basically like a certified trainer. I don't know if it's still the case you're in California, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's still the case in California, but I believe like California doesn't even legally require you to be certified to consider yourself a personal trainer. I know you need like a CPR card and fitness insurance, but that's it.
I hope that's not the case. That very well could be the case. I'm not super informed on that, but I wouldn't doubt it. And that would make me really sad. Yeah, man.
Yeah, which always kind of surprised me because, like you said, to be like a physical therapist, you have to have a PhD now. They don't even accept masters anymore. So basically, you got to go to school for like 10 years, pay like $120,000 to teach people how to use bands. But to be like a performance trainer where you're loading a person's back with like 200 plus pounds, don't need any qualifications, So just something to consider.
Yeah, that's so true, man. Because, like, here's the thing. In any industry, it doesn't have to do with personal training, but we're talking about fitness and health and stuff like that. If you were to take a 2-day certification, we all know when we read a book, how much of that do we actually retain? When we read an article, how much do we actually retain? Let alone being 2 days in a new place, in a new environment, oftentimes learning a completely new modality or whatever it is, new techniques. The real work is in the reps and what you do after, how you integrate those teachings. And so that's why, like, when people are interviewing a trainer, a coach, whatever, you can look at their credential if that makes you feel better. But again, it's talking to their clients, seeing what results they've gotten, seeing how you feel with them. Do they educate you? All of those things are the reps put in are way more important to me than anything else. Like, Paul was never formally trained in formal education, but I would trust him damn near more than anybody other practitioner because of the amount of reps, because actually sometimes being less educated is a much bigger advantage, because you're going to be hungry and you're going to go out there and you might have a chip on your shoulder and you're going to study everything that you can and you're going to put in those reps. Literally some of the best therapists, coaches, and trainers that I've gone to work with had the least amount of education or nobody knew about them. Nobody knew about them. And the reason why nobody knew about them is because these guys were in the basement of a gym, a clinic, a corporate facility, and were literally working with 8-ish people a day, 6-8-ish people a day, putting in so many reps. And when you work with someone like that, they've got so much experience that they can draw on. Like, I've got so much body work over the years in a competitive athlete, as an athlete, and getting injuries rehabbed, that literally when someone puts their hand on my body, like, you can just feel like their comfort with the body and how they approach it and what they say and all that stuff. And so some of the best trainers in the world, nobody knows about. And just because they're not a big star on Instagram that has 100,000 followers doesn't mean anything.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. I'm curious, have you ever been confused by the labels in the grocery store? In Yevgeny's book, he demystifies the difference between caged, cage-free, free-range, and pasture-raised meats. He also covers how to avoid GMOs, source high-quality water, fish, supplements, and other related topics. It's a beautifully illustrated, non-technical read that comes with a comprehensive video series and other extended learning materials. Jump on Amazon and check out the book titled Anti-Factory Farm Shopping Guide by Eugene Trufkin. Now let's dive back into the podcast.
Yeah, I always found that a shame because I know some like very, very talented people that literally have almost no following on social media. I mean, they have their social media accounts, but they might as well just not have it, because it's just so small and insignificant. Not bagging on them or anything. I mean, they're great. But it's always a shame sometimes to see them being visible and then the people that are visible being so incompetent oftentimes, it hurts because oftentimes I feel they're like almost like used car salesman type personalities that seem to flourish in the social media world. I don't know, that could be my bias, but I don't know if you feel kind of the same way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've seen the same thing like time and time and time again. Yeah, it's super common.
Well, what's your take? One of one of my observations is that like if you go to literally any bookstore or shop for any book online in regards to health and wellness, including my books, I'm not even excluding myself from this conversation. I just find they're all kind of symptom management approaches to issues that arise from just living in society, like modern day society. That is what's fueling all the mental and physical pathologies. So I wonder the effectiveness of all of that, because like we mentioned in the beginning, I mean, there's so many books, so much knowledge on like nutrition, physical fitness now, and that and this. Yeah, and just people are getting like sicker and sicker, I definitely don't see it improving. I mean, cancer rates, last time I checked, like 1 out of every 2 Americans develop cancer in their lifetime, then half of those die from it. And I just expect that number to go up even further. Right now, there is only, last time I checked at the CDC website, there's only one state, which I believe was Colorado, that had an average body fat percentage lower than 25% for the average citizen. Remember, 20% is overweight, 25% is obese. So what's your take on that? Because like, for example, I feel like a lot of times people get on transformation programs, get on health journeys, but they never quit the job that's like so exhausting and demanding. Then you're always going to be in a state of being physically and mentally sick. I mean, if you get like a really good practitioner, you can do really good damage control, I feel, but that's like the best you can do. Especially when like today's, like traditional corporate environments, I just feel like most people's central nervous system will never be able to handle that type of pressure and those type of hours. No matter, I don't care how good your diet is, or I don't care how good your workout routine is, which is most likely just probably beating you further into the ground because your adrenal fatigue is like through the roof, or your adrenals have they just stop producing cortisol because your body's afraid of like running out of it. I don't know what your take is on that.
Yeah, I've seen very, very similar stuff. And I think by and large, one of the big things, and I speak about Paul a lot, one, because he was one of like the greatest mentors I've had. He's also been a personal coach, a friend, and he was really like a big, big, big eye opener for me. And his stuff led me down the path of other things as well. But one of the things that he does really well is he breaks things down like in a hierarchy, like a systems approach that is based off in a hierarchy of what's actually more important or what's actually controlling stuff. So, if someone is just driving themselves into the ground with their movement practice, but doesn't know how to restore that energy to add more balance, or they're not sleeping, or they're like, what, here's the question too, like, someone wants to lose weight, it's like, okay, why? Like, what's underneath it? Then why that? Then why that? Then why that? And what you'll find is, and I'm sure you found this way more than me working a lot with weight loss people, is, the reason why it's no secret, like the reason why they're coming to you is oftentimes not the reason what's actually driving that decision. They may want to lose weight for a completely different reason, something at home, something relationship wise. And so I think relates to having an actual understanding of how the body works and how one system controls another system. Because if I'm just working with someone, maybe like with hip pain or something like that, sure, maybe we start with the hip. Just because, I want to develop that trust. I want to rule out that thing. Maybe it is. Maybe it's a mechanical issue and I can help them with it. But if the reason why they keep having hip pain is because they can't stabilize their pelvis, and the reason why they can't stabilize their pelvis is because their core is not stable, and the reason why their core is not stable is because they keep eating and they're super stressed in a job that they don't want to be in. They keep eating crap. Dude, I could treat them every single day, or give them any exercise for their hip, but they're always going to be in pain, or they'll get results for like a short amount of time, but then it's going to come right back. So I think it's the understanding that a hierarchy approach of what controls what, and then having a deeper understanding of why are they coming to see you. And that goes back to what you were saying about communication being probably one of the greatest qualities any leader, any coach, any therapist can have. And it's when we're working when I'm working with a practitioner, or when someone's working with me, I do my best to be as conscious as possible of who's speaking more. Like, who's speaking more? Am I telling more, or am I asking more questions to get greater understanding? Because if you can really find out what's that root cause, what's underneath all the symptoms is just the very tip of the iceberg. What's underneath that is way more stuff. And those things underneath that's the real, that's the goal.
The real solution, yeah.
That's the problem, yeah. Exactly. That's the real solution. And I think just that concept is by and large completely missed by a lot of coaches, therapists, and just in our system today. It encourages so much. Take this for that. Like you were saying, take this pill to get out of this. Take this supplement, you'll get this. Do this fat burner, you'll do this. When we haven't really taught people how to manage themselves, like one of the things that I was blown away by was, so like I really do believe, yes, having a great movement practice is important to reaching physical goals. But the foundations of like literally just getting someone to breathe properly, sleep, and stay hydrated, be a little more mindful with your food, just breathe. Let's just focus on breathing. If you get someone to breathe and down regulate their nervous system, and also balance their nervous system, so they're going to start activating their rest and repair side and the parasympathetic side of their nervous system, man, they're going to burn fat so much faster. They're going to put on so much more muscle. They're going to be in so much more of a receptive state to not only take on what you're expressing as the coach, but also in all of their relationships, it's going to change. And so any coach, for example, that doesn't focus on breathing, which is for me, like one of the highest order things when someone's first coming in, I'll do an assessment for sure. But literally, sometimes I'll rule out a lot of assessments, core assessments, or a bunch of other things that I could do, because I know that the breathing is one of the biggest factors that even if I did fix these other things, if their breathing's off, their head position, everything, how their core function is all going to be impacted. So just that understanding and awareness allows you to be so much more focused, dialed in, and help that person with what's underneath the surface that's actually driving the behavior, that's actually driving what they think they're coming to see you for.
Yeah, very well said. I always try to, tell people there is no like most important like organ or muscle in your body, like everything's interconnected. Like your brain can't work without your lungs or your liver, or like vice versa, or whatever, And a lot of people get stuck a little bit too much in their head and thinking, it's just like my brain that's important and my body doesn't matter too much. But it's kind of like a company with many departments. Every company needs many departments to succeed. And if any one of those departments literally stops working, like eventually either the company goes down right away, or it eventually just kind of goes down. Like even if, for example, the janitors just stop working. Okay, well, who's going to take care of the lights now when they go out? Like who's going to take care of the bathrooms when they start over flooding? Yeah, sure, you can get the computer science guys to take care of it, but then they'll take them away from their work and they won't be as productive at their work. Then they'll fall behind projects and the company won't be able to compete in a competitive international environment. They'll eventually go out of business, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like, if you have any one thing that's kind of like, lack of a better phrase, super fucked up, like you're just going to be like super messed up, like your whole entire life. You can't run in like steep deficits, even like slight deficits, in my opinion. And then also to kind of go back to what you said in terms of like why, you mentioned find out the real why. There's like actually a very interesting book on social propaganda. It was written a long time ago in the 1800s, and it was called The Crowd by a French guy named Gustave Le Bon. It's like one of my favorite books personally. And he always mentioned that like, oh, most people are just kind of automatons in the world, and they just don't really function off independent thought. And you can test that in a person, even educated people with like PhDs or MDs. And it's very simple. You could ask, well, what's one of their hardcore beliefs? Like what's one of your hardcore philosophies in life? And let's say they say like ABC. And you go like, oh, well, why is that? And they'll have an answer for you right away. But then you ask them one more level, why is that? And they'll go completely blank 95% of the time. And for the other 5%, you could ask them just one more why, and they won't be able to explain like basically their whole entire life existence to you and why they do things. They would have no explanation. And I'm sure I do this in certain aspects of my life as well, but they have like no explanation for why they believe in these hardcore beliefs. They just kind of like, they just do because they just saw other people doing it around them when they grew up, and they base their whole entire personality, their whole entire existence and belief system that oftentimes they fight and die for. They don't even know why they're doing it at the end of the day. So there's that aspect. I don't know, like if you do this with your clients, but I have like a bunch of lifestyle lessons that I do with my clients throughout their journey. And one of them towards the end is kind of really clearly identifying the person's core values in life to act as like a blueprint or a launching pad for basically setting a foundation for health and wellness. And a lot of times I would say, even with very successful clients, they just never even did that. They're like, oh, I never even thought of that. Like what I like to do, I don't know your opinion on that, if you run into that often.
Yeah, yeah, I certainly do. And actually it is interesting. Like, so right before this, like an hour before our call, I teach at a university called Northwest Vista College, and it's to a kinesiology and personal training department. And it's so cool for me to work with, like, it's one of the things that nourishes me the most, because this is the next generation of trainers. This is the next generation of coaches. And so to share that exact thought process of, that's all we went over today was actually social media and building a business, because so many trainers have, let's just say many of them, maybe they have adequate technical knowledge, but they don't understand the business side. And the first thing we went over for half the talk was, what do you want and why? Like, what's your professional vision? What's your lifestyle vision? That's going to inform every other decision that you make. Like, there's never going to be a shortage of opportunities. Never. The big skill to develop is discernment. And that's really going to depend on what the goal is, what the dream is. Otherwise, you'll find you'll waste so much energy and you'll be heading down a path. Like, I love what you said about core values. That's that rudder on the ship that helps you, gear, like if you're moving in the right direction. So like, as an example, like my top 3 core values in life are freedom, health, and service. If any opportunity, anything comes across my plate, or honestly in any stressful situation that I'm in, oftentimes it's stressing me out because there's a conflict between that opportunity, that situation, and it challenging one or any combination of those 3 values. An example would be, I remember when I was creating one of my programs, Kettlebell Lifestyle, I was working with a developer in Pakistan. There was so much, I created the whole platform custom, took me 9 months to create. And as I was doing it, I didn't have a login to the backend, nor did I even know how to code or anything like that. But he was really flaky. He was really good, but he just would leave me hanging for 3 to 5 days. And so I had a launch date planned and everything. And sometimes he'd disappear for a week. And I was so stressed out. And then I was thinking, I was like, well, one, it's I think pretty rational and reasonable why it was stressing me out, right? But at the same time, I was like, this is really almost making me sick. Like, is this worth it to get sick over? And then I realized, I was like, wow, when he doesn't show up for a call that we have, or miss 2, 3 calls and misses, our things, one, I'm literally up till 2, 3 a.m. waiting for him to log in so we can do our session, and I'm exhausted. So my health is being sacrificed and I'm sleepless at nights. My freedom feels like it's being taken away because I have to work at 2, 3, or 1 in the morning to do it. And then I can't serve my people in the way that I want to serve it because now I'm 2, 3 months late on a promise of a program that people already paid money for a pre-order. So I was like, wow, the reason why this situation is stressing me out so damn much is because it's my relationship with this guy in the way that it's doing, even as good of a worker as he is, this relationship is not healthy. My 3 core values are completely being just thrown under the bus. And that was a good learning experience. We got it done, but I no longer work with it anymore. And now my criteria for hiring someone on my team is whatever work we do, my freedom needs to increase. They need to take more work off my plate than is put on. It needs to improve my health, whether it's the money that goes in the bank so I can buy better food, or I'm working less hours, or whatever it is. And then I need to be able to serve at the highest level. That is my criterion. So I love that you said core values, because that's an example from within my life, but it's no different with anybody else. Without those core values, I mean, it's so easy to say yes to things, but it's so much more. There's a great book called Essentialism. I have it over here somewhere in my library, but it's like the tagline is the disciplined pursuit of less. And it is such a good book for anybody listening to this show. If you're in business, I mean, really anybody in general, but it's that that system of discernment, that criteria that you go through in terms of what are you going to energize and what are you not going to energize. That's all the difference. And a big part of that is, I think, and this is not mentioned in the book, is what we're talking about, which is the core values.
Yeah, also like an important saying I heard from my girlfriend at one point, she mentioned like, oh, you always teach people how to treat you. It's very kind of powerful. And I feel like a lot of people, especially in work environments, can't set those boundaries. you know they always say, oh, I want to take better care of myself, but then the boss kind of shows up angry and they're like, okay, I'll work 3 more hours and then just be too tired to do something else, etc., etc. But I find it's kind of very powerful saying, you always teach people like how to treat you. So there's a lot of power in that too.
Sure.
As well. So that's funny that you mentioned your 3 core values are like freedom, health, and service. 2 of those are kind of threatened to be kind of taken away from you these days. I don't know how you're dealing with that.
Yo, yeah, it's definitely stressful, and yeah, and it's made me. I don't want to say that I've been a more passive person in my life. Certain things really charge me up, but this has really brought out more what I stand for, what I'm okay with, what I'm not okay with, what companies I support, what I'm willing to do, what I'm not. And it's like that is that criteria of what we're going to say yes to and what we're going to say no to. And there's certain things that I legitimately now will just not do. And it's because of those core values. So it's either caused me a lot of stress and or gotten me way more dialed in terms of what I'm okay with, what I'm not. And I've lost some friends as a result. And that's okay too. Like it sucks. And, certain decisions I've made, like I've been uninvited to weddings and stuff like that. And I know like we're all doing the best we can by and large, but um, I'm proud. I'm proud that I've got values. I'm proud that I stand for what I believe in because I'm really mainly in control of my life, what's in front of me, my family. And so I'm making the best decisions for them based off of those values.
Yeah, I'm just kind of the one thing I'm like a little bit, I guess, bitter, like upset about. I can't find the right word at the moment during this whole entire like last year and a half is, dude, like, first of all, that number I quoted, that study was from like 2016. Like, where was the outcry there? Like 88% of Americans are like full of obesity, disease, mental and physical pain. Like, why weren't they as passionate about taking care of themselves throughout their whole entire life or stopping that self-abuse, basically? But now they're kind of like, oh, I got, this vaccine, you know what I mean? I did my part, I'm healthy now. It's like, no, man. Like, first of all, metabolic health helps protect you from like literally every single type of disease and virus throughout your whole entire life. On top of that, just some added bonuses, like you look better, you feel better, you're actually happy. I know that's not important, but it's important to some people, and it protects you. According to the CDC, if you're overweight or obese, your chances of having complications from COVID go up by 300 to 500%. So just by being not obese, which isn't difficult to do, I mean, your chances of basically having complications from COVID are like almost zero. Where's the enthusiasm and passion there? I haven't even seen like a single mainstream outlet even talk about that, even bring up that subject. It's like the saying goes, sick people can't make healthy decisions. So I'm not surprised that these decisions are being made, because you look at the leaders, they're not exactly examples of health and wellness themselves. And they're always kind of looking for these quick drug-oriented symptom management approaches, which has just been a failure for America's health over the last 6 decades. That's what America has relied on. And they've just gotten sicker and more obese and more mentally and physically sick. It's time to, even before, COVID, just obesity alone was costing the US taxpayer around $200 billion a year. Now it's in the trillions, because who's having all of the complications from COVID? The majority of patients are just the overweight or obese, with various other health issues already happening on top of that. So now it's in the trillions. It's like, on top of that, sure, the vaccine, it seems like it will stop you from having severe complications from COVID. Okay, some people would argue it doesn't. Let's just say it does for best case scenario. Is it going to stop you from getting cancer? Is it going to stop you from having like a myriad of other diseases that you're going to develop from being metabolically unhealthy? No. So you're kind of like, if you don't change, you're fucked either way. It's either like today or tomorrow. It sounds depressing, but sometimes you have to be stern with your message to get people to wake up and not kind of sugarcoat it for so long, because I feel it's been sugarcoated for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, bro. Like when Lauren, who you know very well, who's my partner, we were watching a Netflix series that we loved called Alone. And super interesting series on Netflix about survival. Super cool. I'd highly recommend anybody who's interested in the human experience and seeing some cool stuff. It's really interesting. But so it was free on Netflix, and then we wanted to watch other seasons and episodes. So I started looking at YouTube where you can buy them. And so we bought a few, and then I think it was on, I forget on what network or something like that, or on the History Channel or something, which was what it was hosted on. You could get it for free, but it would come with, normal television ads. So I don't have a TV. I've got a laptop. It's plenty for me. And we were watching it for free. Literally, we couldn't even finish one episode. And we said, screw it. Because literally every single commercial was a pharmaceutical commercial. Every single commercial was a McDonald's commercial. So I can only imagine, honestly, if the vast majority of the population is getting their news, is getting their information from mainstream media, and is just watching this stuff, and from childhood watching this crap shit cereals and milks and pasteurized stuff, and go to McDonald's. It's like they are so good, and there is so much money put into that stuff that it's literally been programming us. So it's like you can't be healthy by mistake today. It's almost impossible. You literally have to be a freaking investigator. You have to be, and that's just the way it is, because the system that we're in is really a broken system. So I totally hear you. And like, I was shocked at that. I was like, man, screw this stuff. And it's always like this, the symptoms of what these drugs cause are way worse than the actual thing that they're trying to treat anyway. It's like, man, I'll take the disease. I'll take the thing. Just fucking don't give me, don't give me all this range of things, a penis that doesn't work. Don't give me like foggy head, all this stuff, schizophrenia tendencies, whatever it is.
That's the least of your problems.
That's the least. I was like, dude, I'll take what I got, give me some time in nature, and I'll take what I got. I'll figure it out. That's the best medicine, So it's interesting.
Yeah. As your friend Jator gave me this line one time, it's like, even a child can comprehend, like if you have like a rock stuck inside your shoe, if you want to be pain free, you just take the rock out and then continue to walk. But adults, like educated adults, they have the rock inside their shoe, and instead of taking it out, they just take painkillers and continue to walk with that rock inside their shoe. That's just the pharmaceutical model 101 right there. Now, I'm going to be realistic. There's literally a time or place for anything. I got like one time a serious ear infection swimming around in Hawaii that like quickly spread to like my eye and my jaw. And basically by like day 2, couldn't even open my jaw. I took antibiotics and it went away. In extreme cases, I do feel there's a time and place for everything. But a lot of times it's like I see prescriptions being given out for like for example, I just finished with a client like a little while back. He was on metformin for 5 years. To get him off metformin within like 1 month, all we did was just decrease his sugar intake by 70 grams. I'm like, dude, the doctor couldn't tell him just to decrease his sugar. And he's like, well, yeah, I mean, the doctor told me to clean up my diet, But that type of information tends to be so vague, it's like useless. It's like, oh, here's a manual on how to build a car. Good luck like getting that car built, even if you have all the damn instructions in that manual, almost no one is going to be able to do that. And I see that like so frequently, especially like I was a bit disappointed, even where like my background is in psychology. That's what I got from the University of California, Irvine. But even fairly disappointed about the direction that industry has taken, because it's kind of like, it's become like, let's, fix your mind so that you can mold into the machine, the matrix better. Let's work on your anxiety so that you can work more hours and be more social at work so you can make more money, you can get a bigger promotion. Let's fix this so you can have more, et cetera, et cetera. It's become like when I got into psychology, because it was all about like finding out who you are deep down inside and then being true to that person, regardless of the situation, because obviously, as the more masks you wear in life, and obviously, in any society, you have to wear a certain degree of masks. You can't, that's just how it is. In any relationship with 2 people, you got to change a few things about yourself. But generally speaking, the more masks you wear, the more physical and mental pain you're going to be under your whole entire life. And that goes into also, like, I feel pursuing work for the wrong reasons. Pursuing work, I feel like a lot of times people pursue certain types of work for like biological safety, in the sense that it's a proven path, it has like a proven salary, et cetera, and they feel biologically safe. But in a sense, it's weird because it actually makes them mentally unhealthy, which leads to physical illness as well in a long enough time frame. You know what I mean? So it kind of comes back and makes you physically unhealthy anyways. I kind of spaced out and didn't know where I was going with that, but I'm pretty sure you understand what I'm getting at. So
yeah, I completely, yeah, I totally hear you on that. We're on the same exact page, man. It's wild, dude. It's so wild. And we're in it right now. Like we're seeing it everywhere right now. Now it's like everything is magnified right now. And also I feel like we're on accelerator drive right now in every industry. It's like the things that were like little things before, it's like accelerated 5 years being in this box of just, yeah, where freedoms are being, at risk of being lost. And shoot, I mean, you get a vaccine, for example, and Krispy Kreme Donuts is giving you a free donut for life if you come in. It's like, where does that thought process remotely seem grounded,
yeah,
or remotely rational in terms of health? And it's like people are excited to get the vaccine because now they can get donuts. It's like that's the type of flawed thinking that, like, man, we need some help. We need a lot of good trainers, a lot of good editors, people like, yourself doing this podcast, me doing that sort of stuff. It's everywhere, man.
Yeah, like, dude, if you're gonna get, I'm like pro-choice. If you're gonna get it, if you feel safe about it. But don't be kind of like getting it and then I see you returning back to your stressed out job that's lowering your immune system and increasing your chances of cancer like through the roof and other diseases. Don't get it and then I'm seeing you at a fast food place the next day with your I got vaccinated logo, and here's me eating my burger and being a dumbass, So get it, but just stop being a dumbass that led you into believing you're vulnerable to that virus to begin with.
Yeah. So
That's the common sense approach. Maybe this video will get taken down, but it's just fucking common sense, man. I don't know what else to say. I wish I could simplify it more, but I feel that's already simple enough for literally anyone to understand.
Yeah.
So
And hope, yeah. And dude, sometimes the most simple stuff is the most powerful stuff. And that's why, like, just some of the basic foundations, literally, like, even at the highest performance level, this applies to everybody, and at the highest performance level, the foundations of health, like literally 90+% of the time, 95% are completely missed. This is why, like, I truly do believe that health is the foundation for high performance. We can talk about high performance on the athletic field. We can talk about high performance in the workplace. In general, being a top performer requires foundations of just simple breathing, hydration, movement, sleep, all that sort of stuff. And it's like, if putting our eggs in those baskets, man, it goes so much further for basically any single goal that you have. You will be way more supported, or someone who's listening to this way more supported, if you focus on the basic elements. That's like, even in sports, like, I don't remember, Kobe Bryant or Jordan would just take like the same shot, like 1,000 free throws, something like that a week. And people would ask them, like, why do you do that? Like, why are you practicing just that basic free throw all the time? It's like, that's the foundation that's going to allow them to hit shots no matter where they are. And that's true with sports. That's like what I've always believed for me as a competitive athlete. I do some cool stuff. Like, I love exploring and different tools, and it's fun. But like, when you look at, especially when I was competing, and especially what I go back to in my own training, it's foundational stuff, getting very, very, very good at the foundations. And then if and when I do want to try something more sexy, more creative, whatever, I've got the ability, the capacity to support that. But truly, like, there's not much special about what I do. I'll just say that first and foremost. Like, literally, it's just being pretty darn good and living the basics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. You probably know who Fedor Emelianenko is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that guy was like perfect example of, like, basically had like 4 punches and like 3 takedowns and was still able to dominate the world for like 2 decades or something,
Yeah.
He had more moves than that. I'm exaggerating, but he was really like big into just mastering the absolute basics, like perfect breathing, training out in nature with this priest running behind him all the time in the cross.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. In one of his training videos, I'm like, damn, that priest can really keep up. He's a good runner too, And he's running with that big cross behind him. It was pretty impressive.
That's hilarious. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, yeah. Do you want to talk about any other topics that are on your mind currently, or something's a good message that do you feel like would help people, especially these days, that are so like lost and confused about what health and wellness even is?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about so much good stuff. I mean, like, what's coming up now is just, I think what you said about core values, man, is just literally can't be understated. Like, having those values, because yeah, I mean, whether it's the vax or whatever it else, as long as you're solid in your decision making and you feel good about it and it's in alignment with what's important to you, and you're open enough, or someone who's listening to this is open enough to question their own beliefs and question their patterns. It's like, I remember talking with JP Sears once, and he's like, have beliefs, for heaven's sake, have beliefs, but don't be foolish enough to believe your own beliefs. And so I think, if there's any message, it's getting very clear on what's very important to you, and also being open-minded that things are always changing. Things in every single industry and every single thing, we're always learning. What was healthy before is not healthy now, and vice versa. So if it makes sense to you and you're doing your research, and most importantly, you're developing the self-awareness from within your own body to know that truth, then shit, go with it. But also, please, please, please do have respect for other people making their own choices. So I think that is, with the times that we're in, that's, I think, what we need. And I think we do need people to speak out more about what's important to them, and what's their yes and what's their no. And there's no way you'll be able to figure that out unless you've got those things that are important to you, those core values that help you make every single decision in your life. So I would just finish with that, man. And I think that if people took anything from this conversation, I hope they learned something. But that's really at the highest level and at the most simple level. That is truly what it takes to create, I think, one of the biggest things to create a healthy and happy life, not just now, but something that you can age into your 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, see your grandkids and enjoy them, for heaven's sake. Don't just get to 80 and just be stringing along. Like, man, I want to be climbing fucking trees when I'm 80. I want to be driving. I'm not a huge fast driver, but I want the ability to drive fast. I want my brain to work. I don't, one of my biggest fears is, having Alzheimer's. That runs in my family. And so, a good diet, good movement, coordination stuff, things that keep me thinking, keep me sharp, reading books, getting off the TV. That's my dream for myself. And I hope anybody listening to that, if you've got a dream for yourself, please, please, please do value your values, because they're yours and they truly fucking are important and they are worth living for.
Yeah, that's a great message, Mike. And if for the listeners, I mean, if you don't want to, there's many things you can do, but one of the easiest ones to do to find out what your values are, if you're just not crystal clear on them, is, try different things. And if you hate it or the relationship doesn't work out, thank that person. You're like, thank you. You just showed me what I didn't want in my life. Thank that work environment that you didn't enjoy. Take detailed notes on what you didn't enjoy about it, and then say thank you. Now I just became more clear on what I do like. So it's not as wide ranging and not as ambiguous. It's a lot more clear. And then you just do that, rinse and repeat, and you do that enough times. And if you actually listen to your gut instinct and, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, what's his name? He had a really good quote. I wanted to throw it out right now, but I forgot it. But he's like, whatever. But Paul Chek had a good quote. He's like, knowledge isn't power. Like applied knowledge is power. So you gotta still have, the balls to leave that environment or situation you don't want to be in. And go gravitate towards something you do want to be in. Sure, it's difficult, but staying in a situation that sucks is also difficult. So there's that. It's going to be difficult either way. It's a great message, Mike. I appreciate you being on the show. It's great to kind of reach out. It seems like I'm friends with a lot of your friends, but didn't really get a chance to chat with you. So it's good to finally catch up with you and everything.
Likewise, man. Thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed the conversation, getting to connect with you, man. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. Have a good day.
You too, brother.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you've ever had trouble losing weight, or you've lost weight, but still didn't have the ideal body or health you're aiming for, please feel free to reach out anytime and book an assessment. Eugene will work with you to cover your goals in detail, see what's holding you back, and go from there. In the meantime, feel free to check out the countless testimonials on Eugene's website in the link below. In the testimonial section, you'll notice everyone has various backgrounds, are of all different ages, and all have had different challenges in their life, but they all have one thing in common: they were all able to find their health and achieve their ideal body. You're also welcome to add yourself to the Facebook group in the link below. There you'll have access to the live videos that Eugene does weekly on Sundays, and other helpful content. Thank you again for tuning in.